My brother betrayed me with my girlfriend 26 years ago. Now he wants to come to my daughter's wedding to manipulate his son. But my daughter exposed him on social media and destroyed his reputation forever. I'm 46 years old. I work in construction, and what I'm about to tell you happened literally 2 months ago. But the story actually started 26 years ago when my brother Andrew slept with my girlfriend and basically destroyed any possibility of us ever speaking again. And now my daughter Isabella is about to get married, and all this shit from the past exploded again in the worst possible way, and I need to get it off my chest because I still can't believe how things turned out. I guess I should start at the beginning. Or with what happened 26 years ago when I was 20. I was dating Elizabeth. We'd been together for 2 years, and I thought things were serious, like we talked about eventually getting married and all that. Andrew was 22 at the time, and we'd always been close, or so I thought. We grew up in a not very big town. Our parents, Charles and Barbara, always taught us that thing about family being the most important, that brothers should take care of each other, all that stuff. And I completely believed it. I trusted Andrew with my life. The thing is, I started noticing weird things, like Elizabeth canceling plans last minute, telling me she had to work or wasn't feeling well. But then I'd find out from other people that they'd seen her downtown or at the movies. And Andrew was also acting strange, avoiding me, not answering my calls. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. But I guess when you trust someone that blindly, you don't want to see the obvious signs that are literally right in front of your face. I found out everything one night when I went to Elizabeth's house without warning because I needed to talk to her about something work-related. I don't remember exactly what. And when I got there, I saw Andrew's car parked outside. A blue Honda Accord that I had helped him buy 6 months earlier. I stood there on the street like an idiot thinking, no, there has to be a logical explanation. Maybe he just stopped by to visit her. Because they're friends, but something in my stomach already knew the truth. I knocked on the door and Elizabeth opened it wearing a robe. Her hair was wet like she'd just gotten out of the shower, and when she saw me, her face went completely white. She didn't say anything, just stepped aside, and there was Andrew sitting on the couch with a towel around his waist. I didn't yell or anything dramatic like in the movies. The truth is, I just froze, unable to process what I was seeing. Andrew tried to say something, like, "Matthew, listen to me. It's not what you think," and I just laughed because seriously? What else could it be? Elizabeth started crying and saying she was sorry, that it had only happened a couple of times, that it didn't mean anything. But then Andrew contradicted her and said they'd been seeing each other for 3 months. 3 months. And that's when something inside me broke in a way that to this day hasn't been completely repaired. I left that house, and I swear I don't remember driving back to my apartment, like my body was on autopilot. I got there, sat on the couch in the dark, and just stayed there all night without moving. The next day, Andrew showed up at my door, trying to explain himself, saying he'd fallen in love with Elizabeth, that he hadn't meant to hurt me, that he hoped someday we could get past it. I told him to get lost and never speak to me again, and he said, "You're overreacting. These things happen. We're brothers, and we have to be able to work this out." And that made me even angrier. Because overreacting? Was he telling me I was overreacting? For being devastated that my brother betrayed me in the worst possible way? My parents tried to mediate, of course. They called me 1,000 times asking me to be reasonable, that Andrew had made a mistake but he was still my brother, that Elizabeth clearly wasn't the right person for me if she'd done that I should forgive and move on. But I couldn't. I simply couldn't see Andrew without feeling my blood boil. I told them to pick whatever side they wanted, but that I wasn't going to pretend nothing had happened. And that's basically how things stayed. Andrew and Elizabeth kept dating, eventually got married a year later, and I cut off all contact with him. I stopped going to family gatherings if I knew he'd be there, blocked his number, deleted all the photos where he appeared, completely erased him from my life. Years passed, and I moved on as best I could. I met Christine when I was 22. We got married, had Isabella when I was 24. And I thought I'd finally left all that behind. But the marriage with Christine didn't work out for other reasons. We got divorced when Isabella was 8, and since then I've been raising her, mainly myself, because Christine got a job that makes her travel a lot. Isabella is amazing. I mean, she's smart, funny, She's 24 now and about to marry a good guy who treats her well. And during all this time, I never badmouthed Andrew or anything. I just told her that my brother and I didn't get along, and it was better that way. Like 4 months ago, Isabella came to my house, sat at the kitchen table with that face she makes when she wants to ask me something delicate, and said, "Dad, I need to talk to you about the wedding." And I thought it was going to be something about the budget, because I'm paying for most of it and I'd already told her I had a limit of like $30,000. But no, what she said was, "I want to invite Uncle Andrew and his family to the wedding." I just stared at her, not knowing what to say, because where had that come from? Turns out Isabella had been in contact with Andrew through social media for the past few years, mainly because Andrew's wife, Elizabeth, my ex-girlfriend turned, technically my sister-in-law, had sent her a friend request on Facebook a while back, and Isabella accepted it without thinking much about it. I asked her why she'd never told me. She talked to them, and she said she didn't. I want to upset me, that at first it was just exchanging birthday wishes and stuff like that, but over time she'd developed a certain relationship with Andrew and his kids. He has 2 sons with Elizabeth, one 23 and another 20, so basically they're Isabella's cousins, even though they'd never met in person until recently. Isabella explained that she felt her wedding was the perfect opportunity to bring the family back together, that 26 years had passed, and it was time to leave the past behind and forgive. And that's when I told her no, that there was no way I was going to allow Andrew to be at her wedding. She looked at me surprised and said, "Dad, it's my wedding. I decide who comes." And I responded that, yes, it was her wedding, but I was paying for it, and if Andrew showed up, I wasn't going to be there. I said it completely seriously. Isabella started crying and told me I was being unfair, that she had nothing to do with what had happened between Andrew and me almost 3 decades ago, that she was asking me to do this for her because it was her special day. And I told her I understood it was her special day, but that she was asking me to share that day with the person who had betrayed me most in my life, and that wasn't fair either. Things got tense between us after that conversation. Isabella stopped calling me as often, and when we talked, it was all very short and formal. My current girlfriend, Vanessa, who I've been dating for like 3 years, told me I was being too hard, that Isabella just wanted to have a complete family at her wedding, and that I should consider making the effort for her. But I couldn't. Every time I thought about seeing Andrew at that wedding, smiling, acting like nothing had happened, greeting people as the proud uncle, I wanted to break something. Then, like 2 weeks later, Isabella called me and said she needed me to come to my house because she wanted me to talk to someone. I asked her who, and she just said, "Please, Dad. It's important. Trust me." And like an idiot, I agreed because I thought maybe she'd reconsidered the Andrew thing and wanted to apologize or reach some kind of agreement. Vanessa was with me that day. We were watching a movie in the living room when they knocked on the door. I opened it and there were Isabella, Andrew, and Elizabeth standing at my entrance. I was completely paralyzed, literally couldn't move or speak. Andrew looked older, obviously. He was 48, some gray hair, a bit of a belly, but he was still recognizable as my brother. Elizabeth had also changed. Her hair was shorter, and she looked tired. Neither of them was smiling. They looked nervous. Isabella said, "Dad, just listen to them for 5 minutes, please." And Andrew started talking. Said Matthew, "I know what I did was unforgivable. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know I've regretted it all these years, and I'd like to be present at Isabella's wedding, if you'll allow me." And I exploded. I yelled at them to get out of my house, that Isabella had no right to ambush me like that 26 years didn't change anything, that Andrew was still the same trash who had betrayed his brother, and that Elizabeth was just as bad for having stayed with him. Isabella started crying and begged me to calm down, to just sit down and talk like adults. But I didn't want to talk. I wanted them off my property immediately. Andrew tried to get closer and put his hand on my shoulder, and I yelled at him not to touch me, that if they didn't leave right then, I was going to call the police. Vanessa appeared behind me and tried to calm me down, but I was out of control, like shaking with rage. Finally, they left. Isabella left with them crying, and I just stood there at the door, breathing like I'd run a marathon. Vanessa hugged me and told me to breathe, to calm down, that she understood it had been a terrible surprise, but that maybe I'd reacted too strongly. And I told her no, that I hadn't reacted too strongly, that Isabella had, crossed a line by bringing them to my house without my permission, that it was a violation of my space and my trust. But Vanessa didn't say anything else, but I could see on her face that she thought I was wrong. That same night, I got like 10 calls. First from my mother, Barbara, crying and telling me I'd been cruel and that Andrew just wanted to make peace. Then from my father, Charles, telling me I was being immature and that it was ridiculous to keep holding a grudge after so long. And finally, from Christine, Isabella's mother, yelling at me that I was ruining our daughter's most important day because of my stubbornness and my inability to let go of the past. I hung up on Christine because I wasn't going to let her talk to me like that, but my mother's words stuck with me. She told me, son, Andrew made a mistake many years ago when he was young, but he's been a good husband and father since then. When will it be enough punishment for you? I didn't sleep that night. I spent it tossing and turning in bed thinking about everything. Part of me felt guilty for yelling at Isabella like that, for making her cry, but another part felt I had every right to be angry. I wasn't asking Isabella to cut contact with Andrew, just not to invite him to the wedding where I had to be, where I was paying for everything. Was that really so unreasonable? The next day, Isabella came to my house alone. Her eyes were swollen from crying so much. She apologized for ambushing me, said it had been Elizabeth's idea to convince her that a face-to-face meeting was the best way to resolve things, but that now she saw it had been a mistake. I apologized for yelling at her, told her I loved her, and that all I wanted was for her to have a beautiful wedding, but that I couldn't be there if Andrew was present. Isabella asked me if I really couldn't consider it. Not even for her. Not even for one day. And I told her no, that I was sorry for being that inflexible, but there were things I simply couldn't do. And being in the same room with Andrew pretending everything was fine was one of them. Isabella sighed and told me, okay, Dad, Andrew isn't going to come to the wedding. Just please don't stop talking to me. You're the most important thing to me. And we hugged and things felt a little better, though there was still tension in the air. I thought that was the end. That finally everything had been resolved and we could move forward with the wedding preparations. But like 2 weeks later, Isabella came to my house again, this time with her fiancé, and told me, Dad, I need to tell you something about Andrew. Turns out that after Isabella told Andrew he couldn't come to the wedding, his older son, the 3-year-old, called Isabella and told her something. Andrew's son is getting married in 6 months, and apparently Andrew is worried because his son knows the story of how Andrew and Elizabeth met. Like, that Andrew slept with his brother's girlfriend, and the son is embarrassed about it and has been distant with Andrew. The reason Andrew wanted to go to Isabella's wedding and reconcile with me wasn't because he really regretted it or because he wanted to make peace. It was because he wanted to be able to tell his son, look, my brother forgave me. Everything's fine now. To look good before his own son's wedding. When Isabella told me this, I felt a mix of rage and something like bitter satisfaction. I mean, on one hand, I got even angrier at Andrew because even his attempt to apologize was manipulative and selfish, but on the other hand, I felt validated in my decision not to forgive him because clearly nothing had changed in these 26 years. Isabella told me she'd confronted Andrew about this, had sent him a message saying she knew the truth and was disappointed in him. Andrew didn't deny it but tried to justify himself, saying, yes, part of his motivation was his son, but he also genuinely wanted to fix things with me. Elizabeth got involved too and wrote Isabella a long message, defending Andrew and saying I was the one with the problem, that I couldn't let go of the past, and that I was poisoning the family with my bitterness. And here's where Isabella did something that still surprises me. She recorded a video on her phone explaining the whole situation, like from beginning to end, saying Andrew had tried to use her wedding to manipulate his own son, and that Elizabeth had supported that manipulation, and she uploaded it to TikTok and Facebook. The video went viral, not at the level of millions of views, but enough for a bunch of people in our town and in the extended family to see it. People in the comments supported Isabella and me, saying Andrew was horrible and that I had every right not to want to see him. Andrew and Elizabeth got really angry. Obviously. Andrew called me for the first time in 26 years, left a voicemail yelling that Isabella and I were resentful, that we'd ruined his reputation for nothing, that his son was now even more distant with him. Because of that video, my mother called me crying again, saying this had gotten out of control, that now the whole family was divided and fighting, that cousins and aunts were taking sides. My father told me he was proud of me for standing firm in my principles, but that he regretted things had come to this point. And I didn't know how to feel. Like, part of me thought maybe Isabella had gone too far with the video, but another part thought Andrew had completely brought it on himself. Isabella's wedding was 3 weeks ago. It was at a nice event hall near downtown, like 150 guests. Elegant, but not over-the-top decoration. Andrew and Elizabeth weren't there, obviously, but surprisingly, some relatives who had previously defended Andrew came and apologized to me. One of my aunts told me she'd always known what Andrew did was wrong, but she'd never wanted to create conflict in the family, and that seeing how he tried to use Isabella's wedding for his benefit made her realize I'd been right, all along. My mother and father were there. They looked sad but happy for Isabella, and my mother hugged me and said, "I'm sorry for not supporting you more before." The wedding itself was beautiful. Isabella looked incredible in her dress. I cried when I walked her down the aisle, like I couldn't stop, even though I was trying to keep it together. During the reception, I gave a speech where I talked about how proud I was of the woman she'd become, of her strength and her integrity, and how she'd taught me that defending your principles sometimes means making difficult but right decisions. Isabella hugged me afterwards and whispered, "Thank you for always being on my side, Dad," and that's when I really lost my composure and started crying like a baby in front of everyone. Now things are weird but better, I guess. Isabella is on her honeymoon, happy and in love. Vanessa and I are still together. She told me she admires that I maintained my boundaries even when everyone was pressuring me to give in. My parents are trying to process everything. I think they finally understand my perspective, but they're also sad that the family is so fractured. Andrew and Elizabeth are apparently having problems because their older son has practically cut contact with Andrew after all the drama from the video, and part of me feels bad about that. But honestly, the bigger part thinks Andrew is finally experiencing what it feels like to be betrayed by someone close. I don't know if I did everything right. I still ask myself that sometimes. Christine keeps telling me I'm stubborn and that I should have been the bigger person and forgiven years ago. But I don't think forgiving means you have to let someone back into your life. You can let go of resentment without necessarily reconciling with the person who hurt you. Or at least that's what I tell myself when I think about Andrew and these 26 years of silence between us. Last week I found a box with old photos of when Andrew and I were kids, playing in the backyard of our parents' house, laughing, being real brothers. I looked at them for a while and felt something weird in my chest. I don't know if it was nostalgia or sadness or what, but then I closed the box and put it back in the attic. Some things just can't be repaired, and that's okay, I think.